And I am coming to you from Newport, Rhode Island, where I am for this month, and blessed to be in a beautiful home. And the sun has come out, and so all is good in the world. And this this share was really inspired by many things, actually. I mean, it's something I've been focusing on for over the last 2 years in my own journey to health and healing and improving my quality of life, my communication with others, especially, and also especially myself. And I have to say that it has made a profound difference in all of those areas. And so I wanted to share some of the things that I learned, some of the techniques that I use, and encourage you to figure out maybe a situation or system that may align with you, and that you can kind of take this further into your own exploration, or again, reach out for any support that you might have with this particular subject. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Speak to Thrive, what I call transform your life with the power of the words. And one of the things that came up for me, a thought, was the saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. And that really does speak to the power of words, does it not? And it was originated, I want to look into the history a little bit. So it was that exact quote came from a playwright, Edward Buller Lytton, in 1839. However, back in 500 BC, there was an Assyrian sage by the name of Alquar, who states that the word is mightier than the sword. And so then also Napoleon in the 1800s was stated that 4 hostile newspapers are more to be feared than 1,000 bayonets. And he also said there are only 2 powers in the world, saber and mind. At the end, saber is always defeated by mind. And lastly, in 1830, Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, stated that the word had a greater tendency to lead the people to do that which was just. Yea, it had more powerful effect upon the minds of people than the sword. And understanding the rationale behind that, and I wondered to myself, well, what is it that makes words different than actions, like fighting, for example, or energy? And it could in itself be the energy of it, right? Because the sword is forceful and I would say disharmonic to the receiver, and potentially even disharmonic to the person who is initiating that violence, right? Violence in general is a low vibrational energy. So that could be a potential reason. Another one could be the consciousness when we're speaking, or even the unconsciousness, the power of that comes into the energy around our words. And I'm wondering if anybody has any other thoughts as to why the pen might be mightier than the sword, and if you do agree or disagree with that statement. Anybody have any comments or thoughts on that? Okay, so I will kind of go on to talk about some examples in my own life. So when I was in competitive volleyball, or even competition, I remember that we were never allowed to say the word "I can't" or the phrase "I can't." I actually remember a coach who had a T-shirt that said "I can't" crossed out into "I can." And I've also seen the word impossible mean I am possible, right? If you take the energy of those words, and again, think about just the saying or hearing those different words. Some of us who might have more sensitivity to that, I'm very audio sensitive. So I can really feel into energies of words, and that is how I respond very well. potentially positively and also potentially negatively in my life by understanding my sensitivity to that. And then when I was training as a physical therapist, we were never allowed to use a negative or low vibrational word when speaking about a patient, their diagnosis, or their body. So we were never allowed to say your bad foot, your bad shoulder, bad back. It was always, we would use the word affected, right? So yes, thoughts becoming things. And so and again, feel the energy, or think about which person who receives those terms, right? That your bad foot, your bad side, right, versus your affected side. It's a very different energy with regard to that terminology. And again, I just kind of didn't pay much attention to it, but I obviously did what I was told, and it made sense. It felt right. And I think that's the thing about what I'm sharing, is that it really does resonate with me, and it really aligns, feels right, and has in turn created positive vibrational frequency, positive energy, and positive results. Okay. And anybody else have examples that they've noticed in their life? If you want to share them in the chat or unmute, that would be great. And then we talk about, I think one of the most profound examples for me was the book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I have my little copy right here. It goes with me everywhere, honestly, because it's just such a quick read. And sometimes I'll just open up to a page. And oftentimes when I read it and reread it, I learn something new. It's very difficult to have a big book and really digest everything. So I really like the small little companion version here. And what I found really interesting, and another thing that I have been doing, is looking up the definitions of words. Particularly when somebody says them, I'm like, okay, I wonder what they mean by that, or I wonder what that word really means. And there can be, right, multiple words that sound the same and mean different things, like the word conscious and or sound very similar to, like conscious and conscious, meaning like being aware, conscious, versus also being ethical, right? Your conscience, right? They are spelled differently, but they sound very similar. And again, understanding the variability in meaning. So most recently, the word confidentiality came up. And the word confidentiality, I did not know this, but could also mean that you have confidence in something. Not that you're not going to share information that is private, per se, or restricted, right, with the energy of restriction. So I thought that was really interesting as well. So the word impeccability means without sin. And what he says, and he goes on to say, is a sin is anything that you do which goes against yourself. You go against yourself when you judge or blame or reject yourself. Being impeccable, self-rejection is one of the biggest sins that you can commit. Being impeccable is exactly the opposite. You take responsibility for your actions, but you do not judge, blame, or reject yourself. Being impeccable with your word means using your energy in the direction of truth and love for yourself. How does that land? How many of us do that? Because I'll tell you what the research shares about that. So the research actually states that we have, on average, about 60,000 thoughts per day, and 45,000 of them are negative vibrational thoughts. And 95% of thoughts, this is what's interesting and something I learned, are repetitive in nature, meaning that we repeat them over and over again. And then these thoughts become what Tony Robbins calls stories, right? And some other people call them, but I've heard it from him first, so I'll give him credit. And Tony has a saying, change your story, change your life. And I think in order to do that, we do need to change our words and our thoughts with regard to low vibration, high vibration, and really maybe tune in a little bit more with some of the words that we speak, some of the words that we hear, some of the things that we repeat, and potentially create a different energy around really the same thought pattern, but it is not being inauthentic, right? You're not telling a lie, you're not tricking yourself, but you're creating words around a situation that are align, first of all, and are high vibrational. And I think that's the skill, because some people like to use mantras, right? Where you say something every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. But if you really don't mean that, or it's not aligning to you, it's really not going to help, right? So I really do feel that the energy of alignment needs to be a part of the process with regard to our communication and our energy. And then most recently, when I do the activator healer coach practice, which is interesting, and I think it's because of the energy of the word activator, right? In the process, what it's my understanding to do is to activate a particular energy, right? And if I'm activating a particular energy, most people come to me with challenges, right? So it's good that that's another way to kind of shift things. It's because you can be able to take what is not working in your life and then shift that energy into what is what you're desiring. And again, being aligned with those terms. So I'll give you an example. I was working with someone, and the two things that she wanted to overcome, well, one of the things was really fear. Okay, so I said, okay, well, let's look at the opposite of fear. And a lot of times I'll go online and I'll look at the thesaurus and look at other words. And so she came up with fearless and courageous. Now, I'd love if you'd participate and just put in the chat which word sounds more vibrational, and if you maybe even why, or it doesn't really matter, but which word sounds more of a higher vibration, if you can share, fearless or courageous. Right. Yeah, courageous sounds more higher vibrational. It has the word courage in it, and fearless has the word fear in it. So you still have that energy of fear in the word, even though we're looking at the opposite of the word. And a word that I very much use in my work, in my physical therapy work, is the word release. And I studied with and traveled with a mentor, Keith Leon S., who some of you know. And he shared with me that when you look at the word re and lease, lease is an agreement, and re means to kind of redo. So I'm very, very careful. And again, when I think of connective tissue, would I rather release it or would I rather free it, which is a better word, which has more vibration? I'm personally feeling free. Yeah. So even though I try to keep things in palettes, right? Release, realign, rebalance, reinforce, I do think that free, align, balance, and enforce or educate, right, has a different vibrational energy to it. and for me is potentially more powerful. So again, noticing some things that we may do or observe in our daily life. So when we talked about this, I mentioned that there are 60,000 thoughts per day, and 45,000 of them are low vibrational, and 42,750 are repetitive in that nature. And that is data that has been researched. And what also I think is interesting about humans is that we can have really positive vibrational and high vibrational thoughts and results in certain areas of our lives, and then some areas not so much. And so I think that that can be a indicator, right, of areas that require our attention and our healing. And oftentimes when situations come up, another thing that I've learned through the Activator Healer Coach is it's the energy of the situation that is the challenge, not what I call the cast of characters and the situation, right? In a play, you have the setting, you have the characters, right? And we have that in life too. And when our focus goes to those situations, those two areas, we, I think, become distracted by the real challenge, especially when there's a recurring theme that occurs in one's life, right? When, it's maybe challenges in relationships, intimate relationships, and multiple partners who had some of the very same energy, but they were just, it was just a different face, different person, right? So potentially looking at that energy is the way to shift some of the results, right? And again, that could be done energetically, but it could also be reinforced or educated, right? Or repetition, repeated by practice, and doing that in body, mind, energy, right? In our physical body, in our mind, our thoughts, and our energy. Yeah, sure. So the question is coming in, can you address using the words around allowing, receiving, abundance, and money? Okay, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. So when I see the word allowing and receiving, what I would do is I would look up, and I'm going to do it right now. I'll look up the definition of allowing and receive, or look up synonyms to see if there are more powerful words than allowing. Allowing doesn't.
Can I clarify something?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I was asking was that you just said something that triggered me to ask the question.
Okay, great.
I think it was around patterns or whatever.
Yeah.
I've only recently come to realize that my struggle with lack and scarcity mentality is coming from both my mother and father came from poverty-stricken backgrounds and doubled down with very staunch Catholicism, and that's how all 10 of us were raised. So there's a part of me that's always known that's something that's stuck in me somewhere, and I've only recently realized I'm stopping myself from receiving the flow of abundance. So that's why I use the words allowing and receiving, and I have been playing with that energy of using the right words to keep my vibration high. So that's why I jumped on this when I saw your invitation.
Yeah.
And like I say, something you just said triggered me. And I thought,
Yeah, no,
I'm just going to ask if we can
yeah,
work around so it's not so much the actual words of allowing and receiving, but you're probably going to tell me something that um, I
yeah.
wasn't cognitive of. But
Well,
that's why I want to
yeah,
clarify. That's what I'm talking about. I've
yeah.
finally, at 67 years of age, realized I've been in a hamster wheel of stuckness from generational stuff. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, wait a second. I've allowed this energy to be trapped inside of me. And it's now time for me to step into allowing and receiving instead of repelling. Isn't it we're interesting that that word came up? I'll
Yeah.
shut up now.
No, that's okay. But what's interesting is that you used so the thing that I would say about those words, they seem they have the potential to go both in the positive and the high vibrational and the negative vibrational. And you actually did that when you just talked about allowing, right? You said allowing to receive, but you also said allowing to be, I'm going to use the word that's coming to my mind is manipulated. And again, I think that's a very strong word. So I'm not sure that that's the right word, but it's the energy of allowing your power to have been altered from a uh, from an energy that is disharmonic with the result that you are desiring. Does that make sense?
That is so interesting because the minute you used the word manipulated, there was a part of me was like, wow, that's weird. But I have a lot of energy in the back of my head now. And what I realized when I took that second was like, oh, that's right. I have been manipulated. I've been held back and held down,
Right.
like in a power struggle because of that's the way that I was raised.
Exactly. And
That's very interesting. I would never have thought to use that word. So I'm grateful that it came to you.
yeah, and so in that, then we can kind of look at, okay, well, maybe, let's look at some words that are opposite to manipulate, right? Because manipulate, like I said that was a strong word. It was. And again, I didn't it mean to tickle you. I call a trigger a tickle just because it has a better vibration, a happier vibration, a more positive vibration, right? Than trigger. Um, so let's look at opposites. So
Right.
antonyms. Yeah,
Yeah, I have something I'd like to share
sure.
that is relevant to this. I have a deck of cards and I read something this morning that I think really makes sense. It says, open yourself to the unknowable,
Mhm.
to what is unfamiliar to you, so that the energy of what you need in order. We're all scared of the unknown, but whether it's money and abundance and, all this kind of stuff that we're talking about now, it's like, I don't know what it's like to be abundant and wealthy because I've never lived that way. I never knew that, when I was growing up. I never learned what it was like to be strong and athletic because I was always told, be careful, you'll hurt yourself.
Right,
And now guess what? I'm doing competitive ballroom dancing.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so this idea of opening yourself to something you're not familiar with, I just rang with me.
Right. And maybe that is one of the techniques that can be done is to know your story, as Tony Robbins would put it, and then do just the opposite. Have the courage to do just the opposite
Yeah.
and see what happens, even though it feels uncomfortable. Because again, just as I think what you were speaking to, Arlene, too, is that 95% of our thoughts are repetitive, right? So in order to change our thoughts, maybe we need to take actions that are very different and use words that are very different than the ones that we commonly look at. So if we're looking at, again, manipulation, antonyms, I want, not synonyms, antonyms. Okay, so let's see. And again, you know, this is just something you could Google. You know, what's interesting too is that manipulate can be very powerful, can't it? You know, and so I think one of the things that I wanted to share with what I wanted to share with Wilma was potentially using a strong adjective, you know, with regard to saying receiving, you know, and maybe put it in a phrase, right? So you can use powerful words like gratitude, right? Lovingly, you know, lovingly receiving, right? And abundance of money. Because again, the abundance, that's a tricky word because you can have an abundance of crap and you can have an abundance of good stuff, right? So the word that I like to use in lieu of abundance was prosperous, right? There's no mincing prosperity, but you can, right? Have a word like abundance and have it go in both ways, just like allowing, right? Just like receiving. So if you're going to use a word like allowing and receiving and abundance, really, right? And even money, because again, you could use a currency that maybe is not so you know, valuable, right? Right. To be more specific about that, and again, to choose other words that give it greater clarity with regard to the energy of it, right? Because energy is energy, right? And again, to have clarity with that energetic conversation, that energetic term, even so that when you're talking to someone else, they are very clear with what you mean by that. Does that make sense?
It does. And when you said,
Oops. Sorry, I just muted you by mistake. I'm so sorry. Well,
can you hear me now?
I can. Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
wonderful.
Hmm.
Yeah. So when you said gratefully, lovingly receiving an abundance of money, I wrote that down while you were saying it. And then when you clarified that you like to use prosperous, prosperity, that made sense. So how would I tweak that? Because I'd be saying I'm gratefully, lovingly receiving an
Prosperity.
overflow, just prosperity. That's it.
Yeah, or you know,
Gratefully.
overflow is a great word too.
That's the word that came when you said prosperity was
Yeah.
overflow.
Yeah, an overflow of prosperity, right?
Perfect.
Or you could say abundance of prosperity, but again, being clear. And again, I personally like to overflow. And again, it's really what aligns with you, because what aligns with me might be very different. And when I work with people, I'm sure to ask them, you know, this is what I'm getting, but it really does need to align with your energy, because it's going to be for you. And everybody has different meanings that they assign to certain words, for sure.
Well, clearly the energies are aligning, because as you're talking and saying things, I'm feeling like a shift in my vibration, like I can feel like an energy high sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you used the word manipulate, because I would never have played with that word, because I would have thought that's a bad thing. But
Right.
but the way that you then rephrased it, it's like, wait a second, that means I would be manipulating my overflow of prosperity.
You
And
have
that
been,
puts a
actually.
whole new world. It's a whole new world, right?
Right. And yeah, and the energy that I'm feeling around what you're saying is that I'm feeling like a lightness, like a weight's been lifted, maybe a veil, something's been lifted.
Yeah, I could, yes, I could, yeah, like I say, I could feel that while we were talking. So I'm glad you mentioned whatever the word was that you used that triggered me, sorry, tickled me
Yes.
to ask the question. It was the right time and the right place. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks. Yeah, so going on to biology, because I obviously deal a lot with individuals who have physical challenges, and I've gone through some myself. And this is actually an area that I am pretty high vibrational with, in body, mind, and energy. And I think that's why I recover from things, even surgical things. I have had that history. Sometimes it's taken some time, but one of the things, so I can share what I do, and in these kinds of circumstances, I don't give a diagnosis power, and I don't give energy to that which I am not choosing. And that's probably been the most interesting aspect of it. So I'll give you, for example, there's a book called What to Expect When You're Expecting. And I consciously did not read that book when I was pregnant because I did not want to have a self-fulfilling prophecy. And oftentimes with when I've gone to practitioners, they're always looking for something that's wrong, and the focus is on what's wrong versus what's right, you know? And I think that equal time shall be placed on each one of those. If 45,000 of our thoughts are in the negative vibration, then we should strive for 45,000 positive thoughts, or neutral at least, right? To create some balance within that. So focusing on the good things about my physical prowess, or my physicality in general. So some of the words that, or some of the things, or some of the stories that I created, so that I recover quickly. You know, that being healthy does not mean you don't get sick, but I recover quickly. I don't give energy to or fear for being on a plane. I just don't give it my energy. It's not in my consciousness. I try to keep it away from my consciousness, because what I've studied in energy healing, and again, I don't know that this is going to resonate with everyone. So I preface that, but what I've learned and what I do believe is that there are multiple possibilities out there, right? Anything is possible. Everything is possible. And I want to give energy to the potential timelines. And when I say timelines, I mean, you know, what will happen in the future. I want to give energy to the things and the timelines that are aligned with what I'm choosing, even though the opposite is potentially just as likely to happen. But then, so if the opposite is just as likely to happen, then so can, right, the thing that I'm choosing. So most recently, my dad had a episode where he was diagnosed with prostate cancer and was treated. And apparently there's a genetic test that can be done to blah, 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 you know, and share whatever with your family. And again, I don't feel any negativity toward that for the people who feel aligned to understanding and having that knowledge. Knowledge is power. For me, though, I didn't want to give energy to that timeline because I lead a very different lifestyle than my dad and his dad. And so I'm a very different person than those people also. And I do personally believe that in epigenetics, and that that lifestyle can change our genes. You know, within reason. So again, it really depends, I think, on your belief systems and again, what you align to. So certainly, if I felt that it was something that would be beneficial to me, or if something that my daughter would like to do, I'm all for it. If it feels right, then I say, go for it. And maybe that's what this is about too. It's about tuning in to what feels right when we're saying something or feeling something and giving energy to something. Like Wilma had reached out because I think, Wilma, on a certain level, you weren't sure about, you know, or the words that you were choosing were not working so well and could be more powerful. and be more clear and aligned. Does that make sense?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yes.
I like it when I'm right. Thank you. All right. So then going into the biology of beliefs, and Bruce Lipton does a lot of work around this, but some people, think he's a quack, and they've said that. So I like to look at people's philosophies and then find my own rationale for them. So the way that I see it, I know that the human body is 60% water. And I know that water reacts to frequencies, and I know that words have frequencies, and therefore I can understand how how frequencies and energy can affect our biology via water. Now, this is something that my mentor had mentioned and also kind of prompted this conversation, is that the cell membrane and its receptors are known to be sensitive to the environment around it, in particular to the resonant fields of frequency that it senses. Thought that was interesting. I thought that was very interesting. And going into I just looked this up before this meeting, is that when they studied individuals with multiple personality disorders, when those subjects showed significantly more variability across altered personalities than did their control counterparts, meaning people without multiple personalities, when they looked at measures of visual acuity with correction, visual acuity without correction, visual fields, something called manifest refraction, I have no idea what that is, and eye muscle balance. So explain that one, right? If our thoughts and our beliefs and our personality, that energy can shift things in an altered state. Again, I don't pretend to understand the dynamics of multiple personality disorders. However, that is compelling to me. That evidence is compelling, and that came from PubMed, actually. And it was a study called Optical Differences in the Cases of Multiple Personality Disorders from the Journal of Nerve Mental Disease in 1989, August. So again, kind of interesting that that is something that has been studied. Go ahead, Chris. You can unmute, or I'll unmute you, or I don't know if I can unmute you. There you go.
I watched the thing this spring, and this woman was talking about she was going to go into a study to help with her MS, I think it was, or something. No, it was the pain syndrome there, concentrated regional pain syndrome.
Yes.
And they told her she wasn't going to be accepted into the study because they didn't think she was going to get better. And so she started thinking about placebos and stuff like that. And she started doing research, and she found this one woman who, in her different personalities, multiple personality disorder, in one of them, she was like blind, and another one, she had like high blood pressure, and another one, she had like they all had different diseases with actual physical symptoms.
Right.
But they didn't carry over between all the different personalities. And I just thought that was fascinating. That
it is. It really it's very interesting and compelling, for sure. And one of the worst things that a doctor could do is to tell somebody that is a very low vibrational energy that was given to your friend, for sure. And that's why I tend to, move and put energy toward those things that are going to help, rather than, that move toward helping or give suggestions toward helping. And I think sometimes, and again, particularly within the rigors of a study, they have a vested interest.
Yeah. I have a question for you. In January, I was diagnosed with a rare form of vasculitis that was affecting my kidneys and my lungs, and I was really sick, and I got better all spring and had a follow-up chest x-ray 2 weeks ago, and my lungs were clear. And so the doctor told me the next week, she says, your CAT scan was marvelous. She says, we didn't expect them to be clear. We didn't think that, we thought they were scarring. And then she says, actually, she says, we didn't think you were going to recover.
Well, it's good that they kept their mouth shut.
And I was like, seriously? It just, I don't know if those were her exact words, or we didn't think you were going to make it or something like that, but I was just floored that, and so I asked my husband, did she ever mention to you how sick I really was? And he said no.
Yeah, right. Well, that's kind of good, because I have a feeling that she was trained similarly to physical therapy, which is keep it in the positive, because the truth is we don't know. We could give best guesses, or something based on our training, but there are things beyond that. I mean, there has been, obviously, the placebo is an effective treatment because it works, right? In a statistically significant number of people. Somebody told me that whether somebody aligns to placebo or not has to do with some genetics. And again, I'm not sure, how much I align to that, but maybe again, that's about alignment. So the truth is, and the other thing that I should mention is that prayer has been researched to work, right? Blessing our food. See, I think a lot of the practices that were done back in the day had some significant relevance, the nightly prayers. And I know for me personally, I don't energetically like the word prayer because of its connotations to institutionalized to denominations of religion, which formal religion, I'm not a fan. I love the energy of religion, but again, so prayer for me is not a word that I feel comfortable with, but I like intentions, positive intentions, and protective intentions, and healing intentions, and blessings. I like the word blessings. So I believe blessings, I think, is a really high vibrational word also. Yeah. So giving blessing, because I don't believe blessing can be construed as negative, but I would have to double check that. Because I think the highest vibrational words are the ones that cannot be manipulated, into the potentially, or don't have the potentiality to be, one or the other. And the energy of the universe, absolutely. Whatever feels right for you, that is exactly, and again, tuning into the alignment and feeling into that, if you have that kind of sense, for sure. So going into the biology, what are some of the things that we can do is to focus on the desired outcome. And that's another thing we were taught in physical therapy, focus on the cans versus the can'ts. And be grateful for the cans. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were talking about an event where there was a funeral of a family member, and how certain people didn't show up. And she didn't give any focus to the ones that did. Right? So focus on those things, right? Focus on the cans and the things that are the people that are good in your life, the ones that treat you real well, the ones that honor you and, you know, bring up your vibration. Focus on those people in your life. And if you don't think that you have them, then find them, you know, or put out that energy. Because I think, again, Tony Robbins, which is the next person I'm going to get into, Tony Robbins has some sayings where focus goes, energy flows. So focusing on where, what we do want versus what we don't want. And it's very easy to focus on the don'ts. Go ahead, Autumn. Good to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you too. This is fascinating. When you were talking about the words, concentrating on how the woman was talking about who didn't show up rather than being grateful for who did. I feel like it kind of brings me back to the pen is mightier than the sword, because of that, that expression that I'm sure all of us were told as kids: sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Right. But for me, when someone says something that is so negative to me, that hurts worse than, a punch in the face. And so that was when I was doing stand-up. If I got, great applause and people loved me and everything, that's great. Except I would always remember the critic, It's just programming, I guess, right?
I believe so. And I think Tony Robbins in his training talks about how, we still have a reptilian brain, which is all about protection. And so anything that is potentially harmful or dangerous will remember. That's one thing. And I would also, from the energy work that I've learned, I'll share something, is that we navigate ourselves through time and we face the past. So it's easier for us to see the past than to see the future. But I'm not so sure that that's so much about focus, because there are things in our past that usually are positive. It's just that we tend to, again, focus on the not so positive, potentially as a protective mechanism. It could be that energy of negativity causes a reaction in our brain that somehow causes retention and that repeatability, which is really quite interesting, I think.
Well, it makes me think of kind of like childhood, right? When you were told you're never going to be good enough, and then you get the critic. It's like, oh, they were right.
Yeah.
That brings it back, right?
Yeah. Don Miguel goes into that also about, yeah. And I think as a society, I wonder if we're moving a bit more toward that. Because even I know when I was a kid, there was a book called Truly Tasteless Jokes.
I remember I had every volume.
Yeah. Exactly. And not only were they tasteless, but they were pretty low vibrational.
Oh God, they were nasty. Yeah, they were terrible.
Right. So
yeah.
And so I think, I know Jerry Seinfeld was a comedian, has been a comedian that has been speaking out about, being politically correct. And I think I think the word politically correct is not a great word. I think it's more about high vibration and low vibration and what energy.
That's a good point.
Because I think Jerry Seinfeld in some of the examples, I just think he's so cunning, and in a way, obviously when you watch Seinfeld, yeah, I don't know. I still think it's funny. But my daughter was speaking about yesterday, we were walking, and she's like, have you ever seen an ugly baby? And I guess that was an episode on Seinfeld. But what was interesting is that they didn't show the baby, as I recall, in that episode, which is good, because the actor who played that baby might have been scarred for life, or actress that played the ugly baby. And again, it's all, yeah, it's vibrational, and ugly is a very low vibrational word. So now I haven't seen an ugly baby.
Right. Oh, bringing up Seinfeld, sarcasm, that is negative energy, right?
Oh, I think so, because it's not being aligned, right? I would
Mhm.
say, yeah. So I would say it would be what I would call more disharmonic, which creates low vibration. Does that make sense? Because it's
Yeah.
not aligned with your true thoughts.
Mhm.
So that would be, I think, more disharmonic than it would be, which causes low vibration. So a lot of things can cause high vibration and low vibration, right?
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that Tony does in some of his trainings. Like he uses, screaming and energy, and he uses postures. He does give a multitude of tools, which I think is great. And he talks even about feeling into the energy of certain archetypes, like the magician, the sovereign, the warrior, the lover, and asking the question, well, what would the lover say? Right. And that is something that you guys can do also. I think it's a great technique if you can tune into that, because we all have those archetypes within us, and which one is the most, the one that you need at the moment. And also putting the intention that those archetypes are of the highest vibration and frequency of your higher self, is a really great idea to do. So that, that's one thing I didn't really get into with regard to the first agreement, but again, one of the best books I've ever read. This is my Bible, for sure. But he talks about how the human mind is like fertile ground where seeds are continually planted. The seeds are opinions, ideas, and concepts. The word is pure magic. We plant a seed, a thought, and it grows. Every human is a magician, and we thoughtlessly cast spells on each other all the time with our opinions. Someone gives an opinion and says, look, that child is ugly. It's funny that came up. The child listens, believes she is ugly, and grows up with this idea. It doesn't matter how beautiful she is. As long as she has that agreement, she will believe that she is ugly. That is the spell she is under. So it is about breaking those spells, breaking those habits, and also focusing on, again, obviously, in this case, many people told her that she was beautiful. Focusing on that, because there's two ways to take every situation, right? High vibrationally or low vibrationally, and there's a situation going on in my family right now that should be celebratory, and it's not, because there was so much negativity around this particular event, which is sad. So we need to shift that. I'm gonna work with them tomorrow on shifting it, because I think it really does need to be shifted. I talked to my dad today and I said, I hear congratulations are in order, and he sounded terrible. Just his voice and his energy was just so low, just because it's been such a battle for him. And again, there's so much positivity that's potentially, right, available. There are those potential timelines from the situation that are potentially really, really, really positive. And that's where I want our focus to move as a family, for sure. And so another quote of Tony's is, change your story, change your life. And that's about undoing those spells, right? Uncasting those spells. And how do you do it? Well, I put together 3 words: recognition, right? Recognize, right? Then re-cognition, right? So that means changing your perception, and repetition. And that's practice, practice, practice. So let's start with recognition. So how can you recognize this? One of the things I do is I like to either listen to other people or read other books or just notice. Again, like the conversation with my daughter, I'm like, wow, that was really low vibrational. Hear a joke. Is that, think about things that are maybe not associated with ourselves. And then sometimes also listening to our own conversations and thinking before we speak. Please do speak on that term. Wilma, go ahead.
I just had a really big wow moment when you were reading the part about the child that was called ugly. And when you got to the end of it, it was so interesting because I had a really big aha moment that when I was young, women didn't work. Women stayed at home. And for some reason, while you were talking that and saying about the little girl hearing about being ugly, there was something in me that was like, you're never going to have your own money.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just, again, I'm getting so much energy in the back of my head and my neck. I didn't realize I had that energy stuck in me, that you're a woman and women aren't supposed to go out and work. Women are supposed to stay home and you cannot have your own money.
Mm.
So, wow, that's like a whole other level that,
and
so grateful so grateful I'm on here, because it's like, if I was listening to a recording or something, I wouldn't have been, I think I had to be here live and participating and experiencing the words you were saying and reacting to them as soon as you said them. So but I just wanted to share, that was a biggie for me, because I would never have ever said my lack and scarcity is because what I witnessed was women can't have money. And what I heard was women can't have money. What I thought it was the religious programming and the poverty, right? So anyway, thank you.
And again, it could be a bunch of things. There are infinite possibilities, right? There are a lot of possibilities, and it is about finding what aligns, just like, finding the strategy that is going to help you. And another quote of Tony Robbins recently that he talks about is that if you're not in the right state, you'll never find the right strategy. And I found that really, really profound, that he is a firm believer in energy and the power of energy. And he is a great speaker, obviously a fantastic manifester, right? I'd love to hear his stories about himself. Be like, Tony, what are your stories? Share them, because I want some of those, right? So it's very interesting how he put the two together, right? And again, words are one of those areas that we can change our energy, change our state. And I think that's why I said that it's often overlooked. Even in the energy healing modality that I've been taught, I again intuitively felt aligned to using the energy of the word activator, to be very conscious of the words that I was bringing into the fields for people, and really looking at it that way. So rather than creating healing around, someone's bad foot, right? Talking about, well, what's the energy that you are desiring around your foot? There's difference, right? Because healing is it can be passive and not active, which means that you're given the energy of a lack of control. And that is something that I firmly believe, is that we have the power to heal ourselves with the right empowering principles of power, empowering education, and those kinds of things. And it is a body, mind, energy component. But one of the things and beliefs that I have, very strong belief, and I think this might come from my grandmother, is that I firmly believe that your answer is out there. It's just a matter of finding it. And I believe that more than anything. My grandmother, I'm told, because I was too young to remember, but my grandmother had cancer of the ear. I guess she had an acoustic neuroma, which is now not so uncommon, but back in the day, apparently it was. And she went to all of these specialists who misdiagnosed her, and she knew that they were wrong. And so she kept pursuing. And so, ultimately she found the right doctor. And when I was misdiagnosed with a sterile infection, which was causing pain after oral surgery, and I was malpracticed, what I did was I had that belief, and it probably saved my life, because if I was passive, I would have been addicted to painkillers and all of that other thing. But, thankfully I shared what I was going through with people, got information, took what aligned, and again, was blessed by that attitude that my answer is out there. It's just a matter of finding it, because I was able to, again, navigate the system and find the right people to help me, because that was an area that I didn't have an expertise in, with my training, even though, I have a lot of training in the body. And what was interesting too, and I think I'll share this as well, because it was what I did when I was being challenged with that situation, is that I knew how to evaluate a patient. So I knew what to do with that. So what I did was I just evaluated myself with my history, with my objective findings like palpation, right? Range of motion. I looked at, the things that I knew and applied it to what I don't know. And I think I bring that up because I believe that, as I said earlier, some of us are very good at high vibrational thoughts and words and energy around certain things in our lives. I believe that's true. There's got to be something. There's got to be something. So if not, then definitely schedule an appointment with me. So what I'm feeling is that take what you know and take what you and observe and tune into that area that is familiar, that is positive, that is working, right? And maybe apply some of the energetic principles to other areas of your life that maybe aren't so great. So one of the strategies that I suggested, or I thought of today, was just doing exactly that as part of recognition, right? And recognition is to, think of examples in your current life. You could write them down. I think writing is a great thing, because then you're using the pen, and take areas that you perceive as going well, or that have gone well in your journey through life, and then think about and journal about, well, what are my thoughts and what are my words that I use around that thing? Are you following? Do I have everybody's following me on this? Yeah, good. Okay, and then conversely, then you can take the thing that's challenging and consider how you might apply some of those principles to that area, some of those words, some of that energy. And then, right, practice, recognize, catch yourself, right? You don't know what you don't know. So I'm telling you, right? Now you know, and you'll have the recording. So now you'll know forever, right? You'll know, yeah, some words are higher vibrational. Maybe I do need to look at the definition of that. Maybe I can create a different story around that situation, or choose different words that give no ambiguity, right? That are high vibrational, that are clear, that there is no mistaking. There's no way to manipulate the words that I'm choosing. with regard to that, and use them. You know, again, I like to use, again, free versus release. I catch that I catch other people on that all the time. So that's a common one. Abundance is another one. So really, really kind of think about the words that you're speaking or writing, or, you know, if you do have mantras, go through them. Even my favorite book, right? So this is how I would rewrite the 4 agreements. I would say the first agreement, yep, I keep it. Be impeccable with your word. Impeccable. What a strong word, right? What a really powerful word. And be, right? So aligning. But then Don Miguel, yeah, messed up a little bit. What he says is the second agreement, don't, right, take anything personally. Now, when you put don't in front of anything, right, you're remembering take things personally, because that's the majority of that sentence, right? So I would change that to nothing is personal. Nothing is personal. I think that's good. Nothing is personal. And then the third agreement is don't make assumptions. And for that one, I would change, I would take the word assumption out, even though, you know, there's some good utilizations of that. Like you make an ass of you and me when you assume. If anybody watched The Odd Couple. But I would change that to require clarity. Yeah. Because that is the thing, the aspect that is the cure for assumptions, right? Is it require clarity from others, right? When you question and when you're not clear, or I would actually, I'm going to use a stronger word, demand clarity. Demand clarity for clear understanding. Okay. And then the last one is always do your best. Like that one. That's a good one. That's a good one. So again, 4 agreements. I am reading the 5th agreement right now. I just started it, so I haven't gotten into it, but I am excited. The 5th agreement, by the way, is be skeptical. And it's about being skeptical, not only from what you hear from other people, but your own story, right? So it kind of feeds into this conversation that we're having right now. Because again, we've put spells on ourselves as well as spells on other people, and other people have put spells on us, you know? So with that, I am feeling complete. Does anybody have any questions or feedback or sharing? Anything that they'd like to just to say?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Autumn.
Oh, thank you. When you said about release regarding weight, right? Everyone says weight loss, and
yeah,
and one of my my good friends, she was saying, well, when you lose something, what's the first thing you do? You want it back, right?
exactly.
So in regard to that versus, so weight release would be better than that, right?
Yeah, I like freeing weight.
Freeing weight. Okay.
Freeing weight.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up. That's another common one. I've heard that too. Anyone else? Go ahead.
The word I really liked that came out of your mouth today that really hit me is prowess. You said it just in passing, but it's like, oh, that's what I'm looking for. And I looked it up, and it talks in the dictionary, it says exceptional ability, or exceptional valor, and
wow.
you know, exceptional skill, or a daring deed. And
those are all very strong. That's awesome. Yeah. Anyone else? I'll share one of my favorite words that I found through discovery. And it's a word that is defined as resolute fearlessness. That is resolute. That's strong, right? That's what I'm talking about when you choose an adjective before a word, and that word is one of my favorite words. That's so weird. I got cut off. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
And just when I was going to share my favorite word, I like almost had you guys like think. It's called intrepidity. Intrepidity means resolute fearlessness. And I just think that is just such a strong word. And even the sound of it, I think, is amazing. Go ahead, Wilma.
I just wanted to clarify on that release thing as well. Because I've been saying that the last little while. I'm releasing myself from lack and scarcity, because my issue was working on allowing and receiving money. So would you suggest that instead of me getting my head out of that energy into I am free from lack and scarcity, or I now
I would
free
even-
myself from
you know
lack
what?
and scarcity?
You know what? I would dissolve. One of the meditations that I really love is a meditation where we dissolve timelines. We dissolve them. So we disintegrate the timeline. So I would suggest, and then what we do is we create the timeline that we're choosing. Focus your energy, your time, your thoughts, your words on where you want to go rather than where you've been.
Wow. Okay.
Like Tony Robbins says, where focus goes, energy flows. So that's why sometimes using the word in a sentence, even if it means the opposite of that word, still has the energy of that word. Like fearless versus courageous. And actually, I'm going to change the definition to intrepidity for resolute courage.
Yes.
That's even stronger, right?
Yeah.
Right. Resolute courage. Yeah, that is, yeah, it's just, yeah, it's really fascinating, and I could speak all night on it, but I should let you guys go. Was there anybody else who wanted to share before we?
Just one. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I was thinking of pain, and I looked it up, and tingle. How great is that, right? That's what I thought, because I stubbed my toe, and it's like, oh, I have a tingle in my toe.
Exactly. Another example is saying unwell versus sick, because you're using the energy of well, even though it's the opposite, right? So
That
again,
makes sense.
can be used in the contrary also. Tired, I think, is a bad one. There's a low vibrational energy, right?
Right.
You could say I'm feeling a lack of energy, because then you have the word energy in the.
That's true.
But again, energy could be high or low and blah, blah, blah. So, it could be, let's see. Yeah. And again, it's the other thing that I think people do, and I really caution patients against, is the I am statement, right? I am tired. No, you are feeling tired, right? So I am diabetic. No, I've been given a diagnosis of diabetes, right? So taking away that personalization from the situation, the my back pain, that's, again, that's something to be mindful of with regard to, because that's another thing Tony Robbins talks about, is that the I am statement is very, very powerful. And that is something that I mentioned Keith Leon had us do our statement, right? Our I am statement. So I am a courageous, loving, passionate woman, designing my future in high vibration. you know, so you can think about those kinds of things. He actually, yeah, so again, you can use the high vibrational words for your I am statement, and that, again, as long as it aligns, as long as it feels right, yeah, you can tweak but that would be a wonderful mantra. And I think he suggests saying it 100 times for 33 days.
Mhm.
And then if you miss a day, you have to start over again.
Yeah.
But whatever, again, as long as it's feeling right, but that is a tangible, for those of you who like tangible things, that is a great tangible thing to do on a daily basis, as well as that journaling aspect. But I think here's where I've always felt with my physical therapy practice, and I think translating into this kind of work, is that if somebody said to me, I will do my home exercise program every day of the week, but I'm not going to be mindful of my posture, or I'm not going to do any home exercises, but I'm going to be mindful of my posture 80% of the time, I would choose that over the exercise. And so I think a lot of times we get focused on exercises and then we forget to practice. And that is the repetition, right? So it's recognition, recognition, and repetition, and incorporating it into our daily life. And yeah, so I'll mention that I had been part of a group that practices the 4 agreements along with 9 alignments, and uses the power of energy and the energy of nature, as well as some other forces. So if anybody's interested in speaking more about that, I know Autumn, you're familiar. And it is that had been a huge journey, and it is actually where I got to spend time with Keith Leon and learn so much from him. So even just for that, it was a huge blessing and a learning experience. And what I know for sure is that if I did not go through that, complete that journey, I probably would not be speaking right now to you about the power of words, nor would I understand them as much as I do. So thank you. I'm so grateful to be able to share. And yeah, and again, yeah, if anybody has any questions, you have my email or the ways to contact. And yeah, if anything comes up and, you have some more ahas or things that you'd like to share that would contribute to this type of work, I'd love to hear it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zio.
everyone.
Bye.
Awesome. Good night.
Good night.
Night.